Hello, I'm Bret and you're watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. Our guest today is Ken Martinet. Ken is CEO and president of Catholic Big Brothers Big Sisters of Los Angeles, where he's served for the last 12 years. Ken was born and raised in Los Angeles. He has a bachelor's degree in business from Cal State Los Angeles and a master's degree from Cal State Northridge. Ken has been married for the past 47 years. He has raised 3 daughters and has 8 grandchildren. Ken Martinet, welcome back to Defining Moment. I'm really happy that you've come back to be with us here today.
It's always good to be back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming. Our topic today is mentoring youth at risk. And I'd like to begin by asking you to share a defining moment from your own life, which has influenced you in living for the sake of others.
Well, some years ago, first of all, I had a foundation in my faith, in my Christian faith. I went through Catholic schools for 12 years and really was what they call a cradle Catholic. But my wife and I had been married around 15 years, and we went on a retreat. And in the process of that retreat, it's called Marriage Encounter, we discovered that both of us had been somewhat apart, especially in our faith experience. And I think through that process, we decided that we really needed to devote our lives to our spirituality and to our reaching out to the community. And it was just a tremendous find for both of us, and really a coalescing in our vision for our lives. And I think from that time on, not only did we try to work with our own marriage, which had its ups and downs, and we did bring our children in also, and we did about 80 retreats with our family in terms of reaching out into the community and helping others. So
you found the best way to help your marriage was to look outside and see what you could contribute to the community.
That's true, although Marriage Encounter teaches you that you really need to look into the marriage in order to set a foundation. But the community...
But to do both, in other words.
Right, exactly right. And to know what's important at one time. The community can't necessarily fix your marriage. You have to do that yourself, but you can get help from the community.
And by offering yourself in service to the community, that brings positive results.
Definitely, and I think that's the whole concept behind mentoring, as a matter of fact. And I think it was a good transition for me to think of that same scenario, that same metaphor for helping children.
Okay, great. Well, that's our topic today. So in your work with Catholic Big Brothers Big Sisters, you focus on mentoring youth at risk. In your experience, what are the keys to being effective, to be able to provide substantial hope and purpose in the lives of young people who may be in trouble or find themselves alone in an uncaring world?
Well, unfortunately, we're kind of faced with single-parent families, much more so today than I think civilization has experienced in prior centuries. And therefore there are a lot of children out there. There's been some estimate that maybe there are 14 or 15 million children in the United States who are at risk. And we, in our programs, would hope to be able to help a substantial number of those. But it's difficult to find mentors, and those mentors can take the place of perhaps a father, and they don't take the place of, but they help the child to have a good role model.
Yes.
And so that's a way that we can kind of help that situation.
Okay, great. And where do you begin when a young person comes into your program for the first time?
The children are referred to us in a lot of different ways. We found early when I was there at Catholic Big Brothers Big Sisters that mothers were actually the ones who were referring their children to us. And even though we had waiting lists of, say, 100 to 300 kids, boys mainly, we weren't able to find mentors for them. But at least the mother realized that that child needed a male role model in their life. Since then, and we've expanded our programs to what we call school-based or site-based programs, the referrals come in from a lot of different other sources. Some of them related to the school, maybe counselors or teachers or after-school supervisors that see a child who needs some special help or special relationship, or maybe even the law enforcement system through counselors or foster care or whatever. These children are brought to us. So we've really moved our programs from a parent who realizes the child needs some help to a point where they really need some help, and some other person other than the parent themselves is referring that child. Therefore, those children that we're working with today are probably a lot more needy in many cases than the ones that we had started with.
I see. So it's become more of a crisis response.
Kind of, yes.
Okay, thank you. And what is it that inner city youth are looking for when they come into a mentoring program?
Well, I'm not sure that they look for too much themselves. People have to inform them what they should be looking for, although they certainly have some absence in their life, some areas where they really feel like they need to have some relationship with another person. But I think going through the process, we certainly don't force a child to come into our program. They have to want to, and often it's hard to tell a parent, for instance, that your child really doesn't want to be in this, and we have to, unfortunately, let them go. But the child will find out through the process that this other role model may bring a whole plethora, a whole panorama of other things that they've never experienced before. We have children who may live a mile and a half from the beach and never been to the beach. They've never gotten out of their neighborhood. They've never been to a museum or a park. Often the areas they live are not safe. So there's a whole world out there that they haven't experienced before, and this mentor would bring a lot of insight for them by just exposing them to those opportunities. And we as an agency bring children to sites such as colleges. Many of them may not make it through high school if they don't have someone there to help them through. But if they do make it, we want them to be able to think about college and that they have the wherewithal to be able to attend.
Okay, very good. So mentoring really plays a very key role in offering a sense of stability, a vision for the future, and a kind of just feeling cared for by another human being.
That's the important part, is being cared for by someone else, a friendship. You know, we had a program director when I first started who used to articulate this so well. I wish I could. But, you know, in the person of a mentor, you have a sort of a parent figure, even though you're not trying to be a parent. You have a doctor often, or a teacher, or a psychologist, or a coach, all that wrapped up into one person. And that's priceless, to find all of that in one person. And that child really benefits from that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What have you found to be the lasting difference that mentoring makes in the lives of youth at risk?
Well, it's more than just what I've found. There have been some scientific studies done, and there's still more being released on the benefit of mentoring, and especially Big Brother, Big Sister, its guidelines, its best practices. For instance, these studies that have been done have shown that kids delay their experience with alcohol or substance abuse, or they're 1/3 less violent. They perform in school by 50% better. So it's just a lot of good things happen when they have someone interested in their life.
That's very impressive statistics.
Right.
Yeah.
We did have a program once, which was an intervention program with children who were on probation, youth who were on probation, and a study done by California State University at Sacramento showed that there was over 60% less reoffending and less recidivism among those children. We make sure that the child is not only placed in a good relationship, but we follow up with social workers to make sure along the way that the relationship is maintaining its objectives, that there's child safety, there's a good relationship between the parent and the mentor, there's a good relationship between the mentee and the mentor. So we're following that relationship all along.
What has surprised you most about working with youth at risk?
Well, you think, of course, introduction to that, I didn't grow up necessarily in that kind of an environment, so it's a revelation to see that kids really are faced with what they're faced with today. I fear, what children are faced with. But the fact that someone coming into their life with just friendship in mind can really turn the table in terms of their future. I think many of them don't ever know what a career is for them. And therefore this person comes in and exposes them to maybe it's a professional career or something positive, and these children just find an objective for themselves that they never experienced before.
Okay, great. Los Angeles is world famous for its gangs. What do you believe that we Americans can do if we were to marshal the resources and actually turn around the vicious cycle of gangs and young people being seduced or coerced into joining gangs?
Well, I have a compatriot who I admire a lot, Father Greg Boyle, Father G, they call him, in East LA. He's very famous, internationally, actually, and he says nothing can stop a bullet like a job. And I think certainly in his case, they're dealing with kids who are already in the system, basically. We want to stop the kids from getting to that point, and that's the whole aspect of our program, which is called prevention. And so we try to get a child involved with us before they join a gang. And I think that you can save, I think of the commercials about either you can spend the money to get an oil change now or pay for an overhaul later.
Right.
It's much more expensive to get an overhaul, as we know. So,
yes.
The case, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I think what you're about to tell us is that it would be much better if we would focus on early intervention and prevention.
Right. It's hard to prove that you prevented a child from going into a gang, for instance. But I think people at the various levels of law enforcement, we have a lot of interchange with law enforcement. We have several contracts with police departments, and I think they're finding that that's an alternative that is less costly. It's pretty effective, and therefore I think a lot of federal, state, local money is being allocated to prevention programs. And we like to think that mentoring is probably the best use of those funds.
Sure. Okay, great. And in your view, what mistakes is the penal system making in the way it approaches juvenile delinquency?
Well, of course, it's the sugar versus the stick, I guess. Once a child has done something wrong, how do we treat that child? Do we penalize them or penalize their family? Does that really bring about long-term positive change, or is it by using some other method and trying to work with the child? Again, mentoring takes a different complexion depending on where that child is. We can work with a child who's actually done something wrong, or we hope that we can catch that child before they do something wrong, as I said. And I think that's what we try to emphasize.
If you could give one message to people watching today about how we think about youth at risk, what would that be?
Well, first of all, there are plenty of them there. There aren't enough mentoring matches, as we call them, existing today. It doesn't take a lot of extra work for a person to be a mentor to a child. I can think of just this last week and this month particularly, mentoring month is January every year. And mentors can be important to anybody. I called two of my mentors that day and expressed my thanks to them for what they did for me in my life. Those things, those opportunities are evident, and they're available to everyone. It doesn't take a lot of extra work. I mean, you can teach a child to, as one of our big brothers just shared, to build a barbecue table, to mix concrete. We had one 80-year-old mentor who used to teach his mentees, he had 3 of them, each individually, about electronics, and they all came out very successfully in careers. Whatever it is that you're doing, you can have them wash your car, go to the market, I think you can make time in a life to bring a child with you. And once we have established a mentoring relationship between an older person or an adult and a child, you know, life has lots of opportunities for kids. You can go to parks and do things that you would normally do.
So it may seem like an insignificant thing, that just have that person kind of accompanying you in your life and you're spending time talking to them, but for them it means everything.
Right. I just think of this last weekend. I had my 2 grandsons with me. My daughter is a preschool teacher, or actually director, and I had my 2 grandsons, and I just took them to the park and went hiking with them. And the relationship that we had during that time, it made me more aware of what my role could be as a grandfather in those children's life. And I didn't have that relationship with either one of my grandfathers, and it is really important for them to have those experiences. And in later life, I think they feel like they really learn something from those opportunities.
There's a connection made.
Right. Right.
And so unless you actually jump into something like mentoring, you have no idea about what you could be to another person.
Exactly. And we have had many occasions where fathers may have an empty nest, and maybe they had daughters and they wanted a son. This is an opportunity for them to sort of have a male youngster in their life that they can do things with, that toss a football or run around the park or do whatever it is, and it's just an opportunity that's really great.
Yeah. Okay. Very clear. I want to ask you to share some testimonies of some of the examples that you know about of the relationships that develop between a mentor and a mentee.
Well, we've had, our agency just happens to be one of the most celebrated. In the last 7 years, we've had 6 Big Brothers or Big Sisters of the Year for the state of California. So among all of those, there are some great stories and that people that have really succeeded. I'll tell you a couple of those. And one who's very celebrated right now for us is Mike Bowler, who's hard of hearing. He doesn't like to talk about that part, and I only say it just to give you a flavor for it. But he's had 7 little brothers over the years he's been in our agency, over 20 years, almost 25 years. He was Big Brother of the Year for the whole state of California, then nationally. So out of 100,000 matches, he was Big Brother, and he received his award from President Clinton in the Oval Office. So it's quite an esteem that he had. But he's just given to his little brothers, all of whom are hard of hearing. Oh, I see. And so we have a hard of hearing program, deaf and hard of hearing program. We're one of the few agencies in the country that has that. So he's been a fabulous young man for us. Then a couple of years later after that, we had Oli Cantos, who's now a special advisor to the President Bush in the White House. He's blind. And he had a little brother. He's had a series of little brothers over his life. And his little brothers have been seeing, but he's just makes fabulous friendship with them. And they are so helped by his leadership and his mentoring that they've changed their lives. He had one who was, unfortunately, had a disability due to a head injury. Wasn't expected to finish high school, and he did, and he's going to college, all through the help of Oli and understanding his disability. And a younger man youngster who, had a broken home, and Oli just coddled him through the whole process.
Well, that's really amazing when you think about it. I mean, we think about what reservations we might have to becoming a mentor, but imagine if you were blind and you had to become a mentor.
Right. Well, he's overcome a lot in his life. He's a lawyer, and he's had a lot of issues in his own upbringing, but he's able to convey that and transform it to use in a positive way with the children that he's dealing with. We have a big sister who's African American, who after she retired learned sign language, and we assigned her to a little sister who is a Latina. And she became Big Sister of the Year in 2005 here in California. Just a wonderful lady, and she's now just been given the award as Volunteer of the Year from National Philanthropy Day this year. She is so dedicated to her little sister. She flies up to Wyoming. Her little sister is now going to school in Wyoming, and she goes up to see her and periodically just to keep in touch with her, and keeps in touch in other ways. It's fabulous to see how the child is transformed through these processes. One of our favorite ones is a young lady who just was Big Sister of the Year in California, who was a high school student. She came from Jefferson High School, which unfortunately has had a lot of bad press. This is one of our, what we call high school bigs programs. And she had been a mentor in her elementary school where she went, and had two mentees, both of them very successful. And she's now going to Berkeley, your alma mater. And it's hard for a child who comes from a single-parent family in inner city to get through school, to get through some pretty tough times, and to maintain her grade point average, and to get into it.
It's an incredible challenge.
It is.
And a great victory when it happens.
We like to think of our high school bigs programs as being beneficial to youth, because it's amazing to see these children, the youth, the high school students, run or actually walk into a school, elementary school situation, and to have these little children run and hug them and welcome them and love them. And likewise, certainly the high school youth has the same sort of feeling towards this youngster. And
so from what age can a high school student participate in that kind of a program?
Well, we like to assign high school students when they're either a freshman, sophomore, not so much freshman, sophomore, junior sometimes. We want to make sure that they can stay in the program for 2 years, because when they're seniors, they are thinking of college, hopefully, or going into a career, and often we lose, that mentor. I mean, we don't always, but sometimes they have to move away.
And about how many high school age mentors do you have in your program?
Right now, probably about 300, actually. So it's quite a large program, and it's growing. We hope that school systems will encourage us to be a partner with them.
Yeah. And how long have you been working in high schools?
We were the vanguard in the country. Actually, we're vanguard in a lot of ways, but we started back in 1997 in several school districts, but now we have LA Unified as one of our school districts that we work with. So
it's quite a large.
It is.
It
is, and it's a great program.
There.
But we still need adults upon occasion to do some of the other work that we need.
You shared with me that you yourself have benefited from mentoring. Please share with us about your own experience.
Well, thank you. I don't get a chance to share that very often, but it just is very poignant in my mind right now because of last week was the National Mentoring Day, and I contacted my 8th grade nun, who's still alive, believe it or not, and actually still working. She is very gleeful about saying she's the chaplain for her university basketball team, and gets to travel on the road with them. She's in her 80s.
Wow.
And I sent her a message just telling her how important she was in my life. My father was a carpenter, and my mother was a Latina homemaker, and I really didn't have a great self-esteem growing up. And when I got to 8th grade, this nun sort of took me under her wing, so to speak, and she used to hold classes before school started to prepare us for our high school entry exams. Thankfully, my dad thought highly of private education. He worked 2 and 3 jobs in order to put us through, which was tremendous for us, thankfully. But she was so important. She gave me a sense of self-esteem that I could achieve. She was a mentor to me, even though my parents both were very important and set the foundation for my life.
You were not a part of a mentoring program per se, but she provided that role for you.
And we ask people when they come, even the mentors who volunteer, to think of who was the mentor in your life.
Yeah.
And we all have had them, and I still have them, even today. My daughter has been my #1 mentor.
We wouldn't be who we are today.
Yeah, that's right.
those experiences.
Exactly right, because they bring another view of life and the possibilities that maybe our parents maybe overlooked sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And sometimes mentors see something about us.
Right, right.
Like you say,
And
that
encourage
our own
us.
parents might overlook.
Right. They encourage us.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I can tell you of another one. I sang all my life. I started when I was 11 years old, and I called him last week too to tell him how important he was in my life. And he's almost 80, and he just was very thankful for my call, just because I had spent a lot of time, 25 years, singing for him, and well, not singing for him, but under his tutelage, and it was important.
That's beautiful. No, I'm really touched by that, because somehow I think that the essence of mentoring, it needs to be cultivated and empowered and multiplied, so that it's really what's missing in our communities, and more than anything else. If that could be provided for our young people, I think we would see so many problems solved.
I like the word animated. You know, even though we're empowered, someone has to get us going, and I like the concept of being animated to reach out to other people.
Yeah, it's really what you do. So I want to really just thank you so much for sharing your testimonies and your experience of mentoring. I really hope that people watching today will really take the opportunity to act and become a mentor, and really, you know, discover what you are sharing with us in terms of the value of mentoring. So, Ken, thank you so much for being our guest today on The Defining Moment. It's been a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much, Bret.
You've been watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. You can find us on the internet at www.definingmoment.tv. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.